what we need to really remember here is we're talking about collaborations. They're a two-way street. So they must have energy coming from both sides.
You are listening to Amplify Your Success Podcast, episode 286. And today I'm re-airing a special episode about how to swim with the dolphins and stop picking the sharks to collaborate with. You ready for this? Let's get started. Welcome to the Amplify Your Success Podcast. Get ready to ramp up your revenue, amplify your impact, and make your mark in the world. This is the show for experts, thought leaders, and service professionals who want to shatter their limits and achieve that next level. You're going to find out from other experts and influencers how they made it. Now, let's get amplified. Hey there, inspired entrepreneurs and business leaders. Melanie Benson here, your host, and I am re-airing another episode today. Now, this is not normal for me to re-air this many episodes, but I gotta tell you, this was such a hot conversation. I got so many comments from collaboration partners about it, and they loved what Sam and I talked about on this episode of Next Level Influence. So I've just breaking all the rules, and I'm sharing another episode of Next Level Influence. We talked about what's happening in the world of like strategic partnering, joint venturing, affiliate marketing, and a lot of the shark activities, so to speak, that comes up, and how to recognize and double down your efforts on people who operate more like a dolphin. And so the theory is sharks are going to kind of eat you, or at least it feels that way. And dolphins are kind and generous and fun to play with. And I don't know about you, but I really enjoy the dolphin energy. And I am very clear that those are the people I'm going to partner with. So this was a really awesome conversation. And so if you're looking at collaborations and maybe you've been burned and you've had some bad experiences, I know when we've talked about this in Amplify Your Authority Inner Circle before, a lot of people were like, I don't know, like collaboration, like there's all these rules and people are, like judging me for this, or I don't have that. And my whole thought when you collaborate is pick people that it's a joy to partner up with and collaborate with. And if it's not feeling that way, or one person is taking advantage of you and not really like showing up and in that collaborative energy, then just say no and find people who are a joy to work with. Collaboration is one of the best ways to amplify the growth of your list, to attract really great clients, because with the right collaboration partners, you're ultimately serving the same audience and everybody's winning. I hope you enjoy this episode. And if you, like me, enjoy collaboration, I want to make sure you have a copy of my 7-step framework to add another $125,000 to your list this year by leveraging other people's audiences. And collaboration's one of the key factors in there. And the way I teach it is really fun. It's really powerful to collaborate this way. So you can get that at amplifywithmelanie.com. Now, let me share this another really inspiring conversation with Samantha Riley of Influence by Design. You ready? Let's do it.
We often talk about strategic partners and how it's such a powerful strategy to grow your business. But if you don't pick the right partners, then you could end up with a lot of challenges. Stay tuned, because we're going to unpack strategic partnerships and how to create partnerships that are aligned with your growth outcomes that you're wanting to achieve in your business. Welcome to the Next Level Influence Show. I'm Samantha Riley, host of the Influence by Design podcast.
And I'm Melanie Benson, host of the Amplify Your Success Podcast. This is our bi-weekly show for experts and business leaders who are influencing people's decisions to make a greater impact and shatter their revenue goals in the process. Now, if you live in the United States, and maybe if you live outside the US, you've heard this as well, you may have heard reference in business to playing with dolphins versus swimming with sharks. And as we were talking about this idea of how do you pick strategic partners that are really going to lift you up and help you expand the reach of your business and, of course, help you attract more great clients. This metaphor was really sticking in my head. As a matter of fact, I was getting probably a little annoying with it, Sam, wasn't I? Like, I had all kinds of dolphin and shark metaphors coming to me.
I liked it. I love dolphins. So I was quite happy to play along.
We'll just roll with it. But if you're not familiar with this metaphor, it's probably starting to make sense already. The idea is that dolphins like to swim and play together, but a shark is going to eat you, and it's going to be painful. So, Sam, like when it comes to strategic partners, I think you and I have, we've had enough chats about this that we're really on the same page.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that it's really important to understand, and this is what I really want people to take from this episode, is to understand that partnerships are such a powerful way to grow your business, but if you get them wrong, they can be a really big challenge. I guess they can really make things very, very hard. So it's not quite as easy as some people are talking about. So we want to, open up this conversation so that you can, I guess, spot the red flags and be more open to swimming with the dolphins and having fun.
Yeah. And I think just as a baseline, I mean, I think this is probably obvious to most of us, but this is about a values alignment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've both been in business so long now, like there are times when people up front appear to be dolphins. Mm-hmm. They kind of know the language, they know how to like present in that way, but very quickly you realize, wow, shark in a dolphin costume, right?
Absolutely. When you said this before we started recording, I was like, that's exactly what it is like. It's the shark that's in the dolphin costume.
Yes. I've got crazy images of The Bachelor one time when the girl was wearing a dolphin costume. So anyway. So let's dig into this, Sam. Let's talk about some warning signs. Now, I want to go into this with the framework of knowing that this is not a stop sign. This is a caution sign, right? You have to make your own decision about the right people for you to work with. However, I think most of the people you and I attract, Sam, in our inner circle and in our sphere, they're more dolphin. And so there are some warning signs that we've cultivated over the years, so that if something's feeling off, it probably is off, and it may quickly become the, put the car in brake. We're gonna get off the ride here, and this is the end of the road. So, what's the first warning sign you want to share?
So for me, one of the very biggest warning signs is when someone reaches out with an idea to collaborate, but they've got a lot of requests. So they come in, within 5 minutes of the conversation, they're saying, I would like this, I would like this, I would like this, I would like this, but there's never anything reciprocated. And that to me is one of the biggest red flags.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a few of those. Kind of a sister to that one. I'm going to jump ahead here on my list because this, I think, is a real segue. Is they ask you to promote something for them, and there are a lot of hoops and a lot of requirements, and often the beginning of the request has very loose clarity, and you go into it without a lot of clarity on the expectations, and then by the end you're like, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted. This is so much work. And I found that oftentimes is a sign now for me, like, this doesn't feel good to partner with this person. It ends up being very stressful for me.
Totally. And all of these, I think, are piggybacking off each other, because this goes to what you were just talking about, what I was just talking about. But people that want to move really, really fast, and they have a big ask straight out of the gate. I find this, again, like you said, this isn't a stop and I'm getting out, but it's a red flag. That means that if there's a big ask, I need to kind of dig a little bit deeper, like, how is this going to play out so that I know
Mhm.
whether I, as you said, pull on the handbrake and get out, or maybe just like take a step back and say, okay, well, maybe I'm not ready for this big ask right at the beginning.
Mhm. Yeah, which I think when you're swimming with dolphins, that makes sense. But with the sharks, they're often offended, right? And they kind of get a little like, well, this is what I do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Which
I
is a
just got a little
perfect.
bro energy flowing through me in that moment.
Totally. And that's exactly what I picked up. That's exactly what I picked up. And then if that is the energy that comes out after you've put the brakes on and slowed down, then at that point, that for me is okay, now I'm getting out.
Yeah, because the interest just stops. It's like there's nothing else they want to explore.
Yeah.
And I guess that kind of ties in to this next warning sign for me is sometimes I'm like, okay, there's something here I'm interested in. Like I'm finding some openness, right? I do a little energy check like this is expansive to me. Do I like the idea? Does it feel good? Or am I just getting a no? And
Mm,
sometimes I'm getting yeah, there's something here. And then all of a sudden, when you're kind of in the middle of moving through it, there's no follow through from them. They don't ever schedule on their end uh, the podcast swap, or they never follow through on your request to promote them, or there's it's not like a win-win. It's just like,
mm.
well, I need you to do this for me, and there's never anything in return.
Totally. What we need to really remember here is we're talking about collaborations. They're a two-way street. So they must have energy coming from both sides. And it doesn't necessarily, and it often doesn't happen at the same time, because if I'm doing a launch that's at a completely different time of the year to you, Melanie, then they're not going to swap over at exactly the same time. However, there needs to be some sort of we're both coming to the table and doing something. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah, totally. It's like, I think we all go into it knowing that it's never going to be even, but it's going to feel good because everybody's going to say, how can I show up and support?
Mm,
Right.
absolutely. And we're going to go into that a little bit more in a moment, because before we started recording, you and I had a really big conversation about that.
Yeah. We
Uh,
basically create the episode in our mind and then we
yeah.
record it. Right. It's like, oh, that's so good. Let's get on and record now.
Absolutely. I think for me, sort of going further on is sharks just aren't fun to work with. I feel
Mhm.
really, when it's time to get on a Zoom call or it's time to do something, it has this energy that's quite abrasive. It doesn't flow. It feels like a lot of work, and at the end of the promo, you can't wait for it to end. As opposed to when I've done promos for the Dolphins that I enjoy to play with, it's like, oh, the promos ended. I actually really enjoyed that. There was a lot of fun through the process.
Mhm. I just thought of one more, and it kind of ties into this having that initial conversation with somebody, right? And what I've noticed is when people turn out to be more of a shark than a dolphin, there's this, I'm literally sitting here having a conversation, and it's almost like they're checking all of the boxes in their mind, or literally checking boxes on a little checklist of, and all of a sudden it's like becomes a, I'm being analyzed and assessed versus we're just having a human conversation to get to know each other. Have you ever had one of those where you're like, oh my God, they're literally following a checkbox list right now to
That
see
is
if
so
this is a good
funny that you
fit?
said that, because as you were saying that, what came back into my mind was the time that I was on with a potential collaboration partner, and they were sharing the screen, and all of a sudden this person starts asking questions and filling out the check boxes. And all of a sudden it just killed the energy, because all of a sudden I
Mhm.
felt like I was sitting outside the principal's office being asked questions about what I'd done and what
Yeah.
I was going to do, and will I repent my sins, kind of thing. It felt very weird.
Yeah, and part of that checklist is usually, well, how many people do you have on your list, and how many, like, what's your conversion level? And there's a lot of really like heady stuff that's getting discussed. Now, let me just say, all of that is really important information. It tells you how well you'll sync up as partners, right? And like if you're in a more of official launch type stuff, it's helpful information for someone to know what is someone able to contribute. But in that very stiff, like I'm running through my get to know you checklist to evaluate you, and you're asking these stiff questions, that energy starts to feel like, oh my gosh, this is not going to be a lot of fun, right? So it's just a business transaction versus a human relationship.
Can I ask you, Melanie, because I
Yeah.
agree that's all really, really important information. Is that something that you personally ask people the very first time you meet them?
Oh gosh, no, no.
Yeah.
No, like again, like I think this distinction is really powerful that we're tapping into is, when I'm swimming with dolphins, which I think this is a perfect segue, right? When I'm swimming with dolphins, I want to get to know them. I'm curious in exploring who they are and what they're about. And if there's some natural thing that emerges that feels like a good fit, awesome.
Mm.
But if somebody's going in with a checklist, it's almost like, am I going to be one of the many people promoting them? It just has a different ring and a different tone to it. So it feels more sharky to me than dolphin. That's the best distinction I have.
Totally. And I just wanted to cover that because I knew what your answer would be. And I wanted to ask that because the example that I just gave, that was within the first 5 minutes of our conversation. So that was my
What?
red flag because it's like,
Uh,
hang on a minute, we don't even know who each other are yet. Like I wasn't even sure what
mm-mm.
this person did. So I wanted to really get that distinction that yes, that is important information, but that happens after the relationship is created.
Mm. I'm so glad you brought that one up. Okay, let's swing to the pool that we like to be in, which is
Yes,
swimming with our dolphin friends, right?
exactly. This is where the
So
fun is.
yeah, and again, like you may not even know is someone more of a shark or a dolphin, and sometimes in the get to know you phase, it's a little hard to suss all that out. But like, what are some of the signs somebody's more of a dolphin than a shark?
Hmm. For me, they make it really easy to support them.
Mhm.
So they don't make it difficult for me to understand what's happening, what do I need to do, that I don't need to spend a whole day trying to get my head around it. It's just this, it's like they support me to support them.
Yeah, they make it easy. Yeah, and
Absolutely.
that's assuming that at that point you've agreed to support them. The all the I was sharing an example, I think where this is emerging from for me is I was sharing an example of somebody who is a huge name, and I love supporting him when he does his launches because he's such a joy. He's so kind. He's such a human being. He has boundaries, like he can't
Mm-hmm.
support everything, and he's really clear about it, but he makes it so easy to support the things that he's launching. And when he's, it's like they plan way in advance, and and they're always right. It's like, well, how can we support you? And they get it on the calendar and follow through. It's like such an amazing experience to partner up with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's going to be like, well, who is it, Melanie? I'm not naming names
No,
today.
we do not talk about who we support.
No, 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 we're not going to name names. So speaking of that, this idea of slow momentum comes to me about dolphins.
Hmm.
And I like to date before I get married. So,
Hmm.
I did that with my husband. It worked out well, right? But I think when you build when you like connect and like, let's see what happens, you're willing to build slowly, maybe take some micro steps towards a bigger opportunity. What I think three things happen is, first of all, you start to figure out how do each other operate. Do they follow through? Do they, is there good energy between us? Does that energy keep growing? And also, like, is there stuff, all the stuff that I want to be putting in front of my community that I worked really hard to build trust and rapport, and I don't want to take that lightly. So I like building slowly. Oftentimes I'll say to people, all right, so I'm open, but let's kind of take it slowly. And we'll talk about some ways you can test drive a partner in a minute.
Yeah, totally, totally. Because I think that's really important. One of the really important parts for me around knowing that I'm swimming with dolphins, and I know that you 100% agree with this, Melanie, is someone leading with how can we make this a win-win? And
Yeah.
it's that as soon as someone leads with, how can I support you? How can we do this so that this is a win-win? I know that this is the green flag to, okay, let's explore this further.
Mm, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. The win-win is always at the front. Even if you don't know what it looks like, you know the intention's there.
And I think you don't know what it looks like at the beginning. And I think that that's really important as well, is that we don't know what it looks like, but it's just that intention of let's, how can we make this a win-win? And now let's open up the conversation. Let's explore this. Because
Mm.
when we're talking about collaborations, they don't happen in one phone call. I really want to make that clear. This isn't a, how can we make this a win-win? Okay, let's do this. This is where we're building a relationship. It takes a while. There's many steps to this. So what we're talking here is this is just the starting point.
Yeah, I agree. I'll end this section by saying probably the single most important criteria for me, and the factor that gets me to be proactive versus just kind of taking a step back and seeing where things fall into place, is like, how does it make me feel?
Mm-hmm.
How does the interaction with that person make me feel? Does it make me feel excited? Do they make me feel like a human being? Do they make me feel valuable? Are they nurturing the relationship? Or do they just do you just only hear from them when they want you to promote something? I said this earlier, I'll say it again, and you and I've shared this many times. I want to feel cared for as a human being, not used as a business transaction.
Absolutely, 100%. And I know that if I'm with a partner, and I'll just give you an example. I've got a partner doing a launch. We all know that launches take a lot of energy. I will be the first person in a launch with one of my partners to reach out and say, hey, what you're doing is, you're on fire today. I love the energy and whatever it was that you were creating. And also on the other side, I'll reach out and say at different times, how are you doing? I know that you're just putting everything into it. How are you? Like, really, how are you feeling? Are you tired? Do you need to get on a call? Whatever it is, I'm seeing the person behind what is happening. And that to me is the most important thing.
I'm so glad you said that, because it's true. And you've actually done that with me when I was in the thick of it. And I was like, oh, I love her. It's the little things like that. I can tell you 100 stories of people who they just showed up and said, what do you need? How can I be support today? I'm thinking about you, sending a little something because, they happened to catch that I was having a bad run of it on something. And it's just, those are the things. And even, this is something really important, even your greatest competitors, people you do the exact same thing with, can be your collaboration partners and your dolphins, because there's a human relationship it's not just a business transaction.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So let's talk about how we test drive our strategic partners or our collaboration
Mm-hmm.
partners. What's the first step? Actually, I'll share the first thing because I know that you and I do the same thing, and then you've got something to add to that.
Sure.
That both of us invite people that have shown an interest in collaborating. We will invite someone to be a guest on our podcast. For me, this is always my first step, because then I get to see how easy is it to even book this guest? How easy is it to go through the process? Are they giving us the requirements that we've asked for? Are they sending it through, or do we need to chase up with them? When they're on the show, we get to learn what they do in depth, rather than sometimes a quick coffee chat. You can be like, I still don't understand what this person does. And essentially at the end of this, we get a really good feel, which is what you were talking about before, Melanie. We get a really good feel. Are our values in alignment? Do I get really good energy from this person? So I know that is a first step for both of us.
I actually do one more thing with my podcast. I'm pretty
Uh-huh.
sure you do this too, but maybe it wasn't at the front of your mind. I actually pay attention to, do they share the episode?
Uh-huh. Yes,
You
absolutely.
know, I running through my list of sharks versus dolphins. All of the people I would put on the shark side never shared their episode.
Mm.
And some of them I was surprised. Now, once in a while, people just slip up, right? And that happens. But more times than not, I was like, oh, okay, I see. And it's just it's another one of the warning signs. So that's another way I determine, like, is there good energy or not so good energy here?
Perfect. I love that.
A lot of times people start these conversations and they open these doors through scheduling what's commonly called a coffee chat, just like a quick chat to get to know people. And I love those. And I'll be paying attention to those conversations and say, is there good energies or something there we want to keep exploring? That might be where the podcast invitation comes from. But then what I'll sometimes do, especially if I'm on the fence, Sam, and I'm like, I can't get a read on this. Like, I don't really know how I feel about it. Or they have something great, but I'm getting that little niggly feeling. I won't follow up right away, and I'll see if they do. And I just kind of let them take the lead a little bit to see, how do they navigate the opportunity? And are they moving it forward? And is it feeling like they're trying to get both things up? Or am I feeling that, like, hey, get me booked on your show, but there's no reciprocity? Definitely something that I pay attention to.
Totally, totally. So once I have had someone on my podcast or I've done that simple coffee chat, I like to start slow. It's not straight into we're doing a huge launch. It's let's do a simple promo swap and see how this plays out, because actions speak louder than words, don't they?
Mm-hmm. But it also gives you, or at least it gives me, a little bit of a read on, all right, so are they trying to contribute equally and make sure everybody's winning? Like, I've been in situations where maybe my list didn't pull as well for somebody that I had hoped. So I'll say, hey, look, like, that didn't land well. Do you have something else? Could we, try something different? Or I'll say, look, that didn't go the way I'd hoped for you. How about I bring you on my podcast if I hadn't already? So I'm always trying to figure out, like, how to make it feel good to the other person. And so I like that in exchange.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a fourth thing. I'd love you to dive into this to start with, Melanie.
Okay. Well, this is something that is pretty common in a lot of circles, is people start to form these kind of support groups for social media, because we all know how hard it is to get the social media needle moving. And a lot of times people will say, hey, like, can we just comment on each other's Facebook pages or our posts on our pages? Or if we're on Instagram, like, hey, do you want to, like, just kind of be there to, when a post goes up, just give it some love and help with the algorithms, right? And so I'm in a couple of these groups. And one of the things that I've noticed is the sharks tend to not do their part. They have no problem saying, hey, can you promote my post or support my post or share my post or whatever, but they never do it for yours. And I'm like, okay, I see how that rolls,
Yeah,
and so I like to think of it as, like, how do they operate in their natural habitat? Like, are they a full participant and they show up and do 100%? Or do they kind of, like, see how much they can take before the thing starts to break down a little bit? And I know some people just get busy, and some people, that's just not a natural skill for them. But that would also, to me, end up in that's never going to be good energy for a partnership. So test driving them in a more natural experience gives me a sense of how are they going to operate in a bigger partnership with a lot of moving parts.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is such a fabulous conversation, Melanie. I really enjoyed talking about, I guess, the side that I don't often hear people talking about. We often hear collaborations are great, and they are, but it's not as simple as, oh, just reach out to someone and and get them to help. It's not that simple. So such a valuable conversation. Now, I know you've got a free resource, Melanie, that I would love you to share to help the people that are watching or listening along to be able to, I guess, take their business to the next level.
Oh, thank you. I love showing people 7 very easy steps that have repeatedly added another 6 figures to my business. I've been using the same framework since 2003. It's worked for me over and over and over again. I call it my 7-step framework to add another 6 figures to your business by leveraging other people's audiences. And guess what? It ties so perfectly into what we covered today, because, when we're collaborating and partnering with other people, we are tapping into their audiences. So it's one of the 7 steps I cover. If you head to amplifywithmelanie.com, you will get free access to that. And what about you, Sam?
Perfect. Perfect.
Perfect.
I've got a document that I've shared a few times before, but this is so relevant. It's the $1 Million Plan, because if you're not ready to be able to partner with people and you're not really sure on what it is that you do, or the different parts of your business that you maybe have glossed over, then it's very difficult to get partnerships set up. So this is the 9 key growth areas to create more income, influence, and impact in your business. And you can go to samanthariley.global/plan.
I love it. Oh my God, I love it. If you loved it too, you had an aha today, there's a tip or an insight that was like, yeah, that was good. We would be so moved and so grateful to share this episode, maybe tag a friend where you're listening to it, or just give us a little shout out in the comments and let us know what the aha was. If you are not connected with both myself and Sam on this platform, connect with us. Make sure we're following each other here. We do this every other week now, and we don't want you to miss out when we go live. Be sure to follow us here. And I just can't wait to hear what the insight was from you from today's episode for you today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode. Thank you, Melanie, for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in today, Amplifier. Be sure to join us right now in the Amplify Your Authority community at authorityamplifiers.com, and I'll share my 7 proven tips to be a highly paid expert that stands out in a crowded market. Plus, we're going to keep this conversation going, and I want to hear from you how you're going to amplify your authority and make a greater impact. Before you go, please take a minute to give our show and our guests some love over on your favorite podcasting platform. Subscribe, rate, and review. Leave your full name, and I'll spotlight you and your authority on social media.